Hi everyone, thank you for tuning into another episode of Buzz School. I'm Jasmine Pierce, a VP here at Becca. On this episode, we speak with Dee Poku, who is the founder and CEO of the WIE Suite, a membership community for women in leadership. Dee has had a varied career, most recently as a Hollywood studio executive. On this episode, she shares with us her advice on how to create a supportive and engaged community, what steps you should take before taking the leap into entrepreneurship, and how she balances motherhood, work, and life. Keep listening, and I hope you enjoy. Well, for those of us that aren't familiar, can you tell us about the WIE Suite, how it came to be, and what purpose it serves today?
So the WIE Suite is a membership community for women in leadership. The focus is really on bringing together women who have reached senior levels in their careers, who want to sort of continue to thrive and advance, who've sort of, navigated every possible obstacle to get to where they are, and to really sort of create this sort of network that really supports them, as they kind of sort of transcend to the next level. And, it was really inspired by my own experiences. So before I was a founder, I worked for a large entertainment company, and it was hard. Like it was very cutthroat. There wasn't, a whole lot of sisterhood. And so I really wanted to create something that certainly had been missing for me in my own career, but also to create something that was very anchored in women sort of doing business with one another and sort of elevating one another's careers in a very sort of tangible way. So that's what we do on a daily basis. It's very action oriented.
You have some of the most successful women in the world that are a part of this. Major names like Melinda Gates and Ariana Huffington, Diane von Furstenberg, Tyra Banks. I could go on and on. This is obviously no easy feat, but you have made it seem like you did this so organically. What do you think was the secret behind the success of the WIE Suite early on?
I honestly have to say that initially it was just naivete. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think sometimes like the less you know, the better, because you just kind of think, well, let's just ask Melinda Gates to come and speak and just see what happens. You know what I mean? Whereas I think that now I'm probably a bit more pragmatic about those things. And so, it was like a little bit of just kind of, why not? Mm-hmm. And also, everything I do is anchored in community. And so, what will happen with anyone is like over the years, you sort of, you build these blocks of communities where you sort of are, there to support one another. And so I'm just a strong believer in like, working through your connections. And so wherever possible, I'm trying not to send a cold email or, do a cold outreach. And I'm really sort of trying to find that connective tissue that, that connects me to the person I'm trying to reach. So, it's really sort of a combination of like, these are the people we admire, let's go after them, but also just like looking to my own network for that support and for introductions, and and like those sort of relationships are what make the world go round.
That's fascinating, and that was going to be one of my next questions for people that are looking to build similar communities. What are the first steps to take, and how do you engage new members, and how do you continue to keep members engaged?
It starts early. I mean, there are people in my life who I've known since college. We've continued to be supportive towards one another. In fact, one of my oldest friends, we met when we were 6. And so, I've always, I love being around people. I get my energy from the relationships around me, from the people around me. So, it's not as if, it's now what I do for a living, but it didn't really start that way. It just started off as like a woman who really, I'm very much a sort of people person. I really sort of recognize the value of giving and of connecting people. So I just always did that. And, it sort of turned into what I do. So I feel really thankful. But it starts early, from school, from college. The people that you meet there are the titans of the future. And so I think that often when we're younger, we tend to sort of look ahead to people who are a few steps ahead of us, and we think that those are the relationships we need to build, but actually it's the ecosystem around you that really sort of builds the career and the life that you have in the future.
Do you have a favorite moment or even like a favorite outcome from some aspect of the WIE Suite?
Just so many great examples of women who have raised money through the WIE Suite, who got promoted, who changed roles. I just actually got an email from one of our members who was quite a high-flying executive at a major company, but she'd been unhappy there for a very, very long time and had been talking about building her own business. But it's terrifying, especially when you come from corporate, which I did, to make that kind of leap, because suddenly you don't have all of that infrastructure anymore, and so it's a hard decision to make. And as a result of joining the WIE Suite and like being a part of a really sort of great network, because we also give women their own kind of smaller advisory boards to just to kind of meet with on a monthly basis to help them grow. And so she was like in one of those smaller groups, and by the end of that sort of trajectory with that group, she'd done it, like she'd made the leap, and has launched her business. She raised capital. It's really exciting to sort of see that come to life.
Let's talk about making that leap into entrepreneurship or following your passions. I mean, you're no stranger to this, as you said. I feel like you've had several different career pivots, and it seems like you've really let your instincts and your passions guide you. How did you find the courage to take this leap, and what advice would you give someone who wants to make a pivot later in their career?
I think for me, it was more about, I had really plateaued, and so I kind of set myself some sort of goals and milestones. Like, so if I don't get to this point, then I'm pivoting and I'm making this move. It wasn't that I sort of, just kind of organically fell into entrepreneurship, or like it was really this like burning passion. So I kind of I want to sort of disabuse people of that notion, because I think that often, when we see entrepreneurs, we just think it's like, it looks like a fairy tale, like I had this burning idea and then like this happened, and like often we fall into things just through pain points that we're navigating. So for me, as a woman in corporate, my pain point was like I got stuck, and I didn't really have anywhere to turn to help me get unstuck, and that really became the business I created. And so, the advice I would give, certainly like for anyone going from corporate into entrepreneurship, is to lay the foundations first, like really, because I think it's a particularly hard one when you're used to certain sort of benefits and certain, and sort of infrastructure. So really lay the foundations first, like work on all the, the business plan and your research and your numbers, and like do everything you possibly can to lay the foundations before you make the leap.
I know fundraising is a big part of, starting and running a successful business. And for Black women, especially, it's notoriously difficult. We, I think, raised just the tiniest bit of funds compared to other groups. And so you founded an organization in response to this called Black Women Raise, which helps Black female founders raise capital and promote growth within their businesses. What do you think are some of the top qualities and tactics that make for a successful fundraising scenario?
So, first of all, you have to really kind of figure out the narrative story that you want to tell to your investors that gets them really excited about what you're going to do with their money. You need to be able to express that really succinctly, and make it sound like it can something that could be sort of huge and life-changing for the world, like something that's really going to change the world. And I think that for women, we're so kind of pragmatic in the way that we talk about what we're doing. Like, that's why we're good leaders, because like, we're forward thinkers, like we don't take unnecessary risks. But those qualities are not necessarily the best when you're going into a room to pitch investors, because you need to kind of be a bit more bombastic. Like you really need to pitch, like, I'm going to change the world with this idea, and I'm going to reach, multiple millions of people. And like, you really need to sort of get them overexcited about how much money you're going to make them in a really sort of, sort of expansive way. So you really sort of need to hone like that sort of narrative that you're going to use. You have to have an amazing deck that is very, very succinct. That's like 10 to 15 pages, and really sort of tells a story. And then you're going to need those all important introductions. So investors get so many approaches on a daily basis, and they can sort of just be a bit lazy about who they meet. I call it laziness, because I think that, they miss out on so much opportunity by being that way. But I also understand that, it's hard to meet with everyone and say yes to everyone, and, and people are sort of unknown quantities. So you're going to need to sort of research, your investors, and like figure out who in your network can make those introductions for you. Yeah, and then you sort of, need to go in the room and like, bring your full self, and or the full self that makes sense for each investor.
Right. It's notoriously difficult, especially as Black women, to bring your full self into a lot of corporate spaces. I mean, it's something I've dealt with in my career. I think I read that you once said that it was quite hard for you as a Black woman to be in so many spaces where you were the only one. Mm-hmm. So I imagine being in these boardrooms pitching to a bunch of white guys, is not easy for people. How did you navigate your career in corporate America, being in these spaces as one of the only Black women? How did you navigate that in the moment? And do you have any advice for women that are currently going through that?
I think thankfully the world has changed a bit since my time, where I really felt like I had to assimilate in a way that hopefully women don't have to in the same way anymore. Like there's still some like shape shifting, but I think that, when I was starting out, like it was just kind of so barren, there was just like no one. And so you just really felt like you had to just be like the crowd and like not sort of stick out in a way that was going to affect your ability to succeed, right? Because you're going into spaces where there's bias. So for me, like I was like trying not to draw attention to anything that would sort of compound that bias and affect my job and my career trajectory. So, and then just over time, as I got more confident, like, just, because, but this was like, I was in my like early 20s. So I was really young. So like over time, you just start to kind of know who you are, feel confident in those spaces, your like emotional intelligence really increases. And then you just get better at like being like your sort of true full self in those spaces. But I would just always recommend that whatever space you go into, whoever you are, whatever you look like, that listening is really important and observing is really important and EQ is really important.
Let's talk about work-life balance. So this past year and a half has put even more of a spotlight on the delicate balance of raising children while managing a career. How do you personally balance entrepreneurship and motherhood? And do you have any advice for working moms?
It's been the toughest 18 months for me, for all moms, especially those who have kids under the age of 10. And so, like I still sort of have palpitations when I think about those first kind of couple of months, when the world shut down and when we had to sort of pivot to homeschooling and like, and just like working from home and pivoting our businesses. And like, it was just a lot. And so I'm still coming out of that sort of psychologically. I think that I've always been someone who likes to compartmentalize things, and put things, it's maybe the Virgo in me, but I like to sort of put things in buckets and boxes. Um, and so, I'll carve out like, this is the time when I do this. And so it's all sort of merged and integrated, as opposed to this sort of harmonious balance. So I would just suggest, like, carve out carve out the sort of the important things, around sort of family and friends that you really don't want to lose, and like just hold that space sacred.
I know the WIE Suite acronym stands for Women, Inspiration, and Enterprise. Who inspires you personally in your life?
So I have a best friend. We've been friends for years. We sort of started out in our careers together, and I'm always like inspired by her. Like, we really just like have each other's backs, and I wish for everyone to have that sort of friendship, that's rooted in mutual love and respect, but also an understanding of like how we can be helpful to each other career-wise. Like, it really is like, we're like very supportive of one another's careers, but also our kids are friends. Like, it just kind of spans the gamut. And so she's certainly like a personal inspiration for me. Also, who I really love is Thashanda Duckett. She was the CEO of Chase Consumer Bank, and is now she's the top boss at TIAA. And I've met her a few times, and she's done some stuff for me, and she is like such the real deal.
She's a boss. She's really incredible.
Such a boss. She's such a boss. I've met so many impressive women, and some really are so great and so giving, and some there's definitely like a personal branding thing going on. When I met her, she didn't know who I was, and I sort of reached out, and actually I'd asked her to do come and speak at Black Women Raise, and it was like the first event, no one had ever heard of it. It was for 50 women, like it wasn't like some huge audience, and she said yes. And she just she gave everyone her contact info and was like, I've got you. So I think that she's such a great example of what it is to lead.
We usually wrap up with a couple rapid fire questions. It's our Buzz School signature. Last thing you purchased that brought you joy?
Some boots, fancy ones.
Nice. Favorite book or podcast from the last year?
Priya Parker has a book on community and connecting, and it's really great. So that's a current good one.
Last thing that made you belly laugh?
Let's see. It definitely would be something my son said. Yes, everything my son says generally makes me belly laugh.
Restaurant or bar where you are a regular?
I go to Dumbo House a lot. I've been a member of Soho House since it opened in London, so it's really like my second family.
Who or what do you want to throw some buzz to? So who is doing something cool or noteworthy that you think more people should know about?
So my friend Nikeo Grieco, who is a founder and also a member of the WIE Suite, launched a platform called 13 Noon that specifically focuses on Black and Brown owned brands. And she was really sort of inspired by what she saw like over the last year, where there was this like big emphasis on like Black owned businesses, but she really wanted to sort of anchor that in something real and something that would really drive money and support to Black owned brands. And so she created this platform. It's really amazing. And she actually just, raised a $3 million seed. And the seed was led by another Black woman VC called Ariane Simone. And I love that too, because there are so few Black VCs, let alone, you know, Black women VCs. And so like just that story is really inspiring me at the moment.
Dee, you are incredible. You are such an
Thank you.
inspiration to me, and I'm sure many, many people. So thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for all of your advice and guidance today.